So welcome back, guys. So in our last tutorial, in our last session, we talked about fetch API, and then so in this session now, in this tutorial, we'll be talking about forEach method in JavaScript. That is, how can you make use of forEach method? So in this tutorial, you'll be learning how to make use of it, what it entails, and then what it does not entails. So moving on to the introduction. The forEach method in JavaScript is used to iterate over an array and execute a provided callback function on each element. It is important to know that for each function or method does not return anything. It returns undefined, making it not chainable. So from what you read here so far is that it is telling us that for each method it iterates over an array and then it iterates over each element, that is every single element in the array. But it is important for us to note that it does not return any element. It returns undefined. So as time goes on, as we move on in this session, you will see what we are discussing about. So it says that it executes a provided callback function. So that is what we want to talk next about now. So the provided callback function for each method is taken as a parameter. So that is why we are moving on to the next thing, which says parameter. A callback function. A function is to execute for each element in the array. Its return value is discarded. The function is called with the following argument. Number one, the element, the index, and then the array. So what this thing is trying to tell us is that for each method now, it has a single parameter, and then in that single parameter, which is a callback function, it's what it has three arguments, which is what the element, the index, and then the array. So to explain on the element, the current element being processed in the array. So as time goes on, I know this is what you're talking about. So the second one is the index. We all know that in JavaScript, the index starts from 0. So the index of the current element being processed in the array, and then lastly array, which is the array you are iterating upon. That is what this thing implement. That is the array for which that is being called upon. So as time goes on, you will see what we are talking about. And then also it has this arg as what as optional. So let's move on. So to explain the parameters we have in callback function in details, like I said, the first one we have is the element, and then the second one we have is the index, and then the third one we have is what the array upon which is being called upon. So let's now move on now. To explain this in details, the parameter of callback, let's explain it in details. The first one we have here, we have the element. This is the value of the current element in the array during the iteration. So let me give you an instance here. So I've created an index file here, and then I've also created a JS file here. So and then I've also imported the JS file into the index element file, index.ln.html file, and then I just give the little style in here, which is what I reset everything to 0, and then I change it to border box, and then I paste everything in the center. So let's now move on to the JavaScript. So what is this thing telling us now? It tells us that the value, that is the element, this is the value of the current element during the iteration of the array. So let's give for instance now. For instance, you have const and then number. Let's declare a variable called number by making use of const, and then we have an array of 10, 20, and then 30. So this is an array of number right now. So we now want to make use of forEach method on it. So you can now see numbers dot forEach. Don't forget, this is the forEach now. So it has a callback function. Can you see it now? Can you see this is what we are talking about? The forEach has a callback function, and then the callback function have a value, index, and then the array. The value we are calling it the element, and then the index, and then the array. That is what we are trying to solve in this case here now. So it has a callback function. Let's now put the callback function as this. So in this case now I want to look for the element. let's write element and then call it out. So let's now see console.log what the element. So let's go to our browser now and then let's see what we have here. In the case of this is our browser here. So can you see now the tutorial for each? So this is what we are having here. 10, 20, 20. That is, it has retrieved over the array. It has retreated over the array and then it printed out what the element. So let's move to the next one. The first one we are talking about the parameters. Don't forget, in the callback function, the first one we have is the element, or we can call it the value, and then the second one we are having here is the index. We have the index. So let's print out the index and then let's see what we have. So we are having numbers dot for each. Don't forget, in the case of this now, we are having what element and then what index. So let's now see console.log and then we say this element, right? And then we're having what here? We're having elements at the index of what? Of this. At the index of each index. Can you see? So that is what we're having here now. We want to check out the index, because don't forget, we are told we know that for each has what 3 words. It has a single parameter, and the single parameter is a callback function, and then the callback function has 3 words, 3 parameters. So we've dealt with the first one, which is the element. The second one is what index. So that's what we are trying to print out here now. So let's go to our browser and let's check it. Can you see? The first one says element 10, or the value 10 at the index of what 0, the 20 at the index of what 2, and then lastly 20 at the index of what 2. Don't forget, the indexes are 0 base, so that is why I started from what 0, 1, 2. So the last one we have, which is what is the array. That is the original array that is being called upon. That is the array we are iterating over. So let's now say numbers dot for each. Don't forget elements, index, and then the array. So we are having this now. Let's now say console.log the array. So this is what we are having here. At what? So let's comment this one out. Let's comment this one out and then let's see what we have here. Can you see this is what we are having? We are having what? The array. Because it is retreating over, and then we have 3 words. We have 3 elements in the array from the original array. So at the element, this is the 1, 2, 3. So that is the array that is what it is coming back from what we've done from the given number of the array. So can you see? So next now, let's try to make use of array to manipulate the DOM. That is, let's just create various button, or let's just have a various class in a various tag, in a various HTML tag, and then let's now call it by making use of forEach. You want to use forEach to iterate over what we have here. So in this case now so I want to have a single div. The div will have a button of, and then the class will be btn, and then multiply by what 3. So let's see what we have here. That's also the shortcut to that. So what are we having here now? We're having a single div with what? With 3 buttons stack in it. That is what we are having here right now. Can you see? So, and then each of it carried a class of what? A btn. So let's now make use of forEach method to access this button, to access each of it. So let's do it here now. So what do you want to do? You want to what? Manipulate the DOM element. So the first thing for us to do is that let's try to select the HTML tag, and then we are going to use this because you can see that we are having 3 buttons here, 3 buttons elements with the same class. So the best thing for us to do to be able to select this is to make use of query select all. So let's now give this one buttons, and then let's now say document dot query selector all, and then let's give the class of what? The btn, because this is what we are having here, the class of what? Btn. So since we've done that, now what's the next thing for us to do? Let's inject text into this button, and then let's make use of JavaScript. So let's manipulate it. So how can we do that? How can we achieve that? Since you agree with me that this is what it is menu. So for instance now, let's see console.log button, console.log type of what? Buttons that we have in here. Type of button. So let's see what we have. So we are having this as an object. So definitely, yeah, we are having this as an object. So we want to retrieve over it. We want to retrieve over the object we're having. So what can we do first now? Firstly, let's do what? Let's retrieve over it by making use of forEach method. So let's say button dot forEach, and then let's give the the element, which is the first one, button, and then the index. Don't forget, we're checking out for the index here now. And then let's now say this now. Let's now say button, that is this element that is coming here, those text context equals to what? Button, and then what? Index plus 1. Can you see? Secondly, let's now see button. We want to add an event listener to it. Add event listener. The event listener of what? Click. That is whenever it happens. So we have a callback function for that. What do you want to happen whenever the button is clicked? We want you to alert that button clicked. That you clicked. You click button at this index. You click the button of this certain index. Index plus 1. And then the reason why we are doing the index plus 1 is that you agree with me that index starts from 0. So let's now see what we have there now. So can you see we are having button 1, button 2, button 3. In the case of this now, let's just give it a margin, or let's just give the text a margin bottom. So let's just say style margin bottom of what? Of 30 pixel. So for instance now, let's click button 1. You see, when we click button 1, it gives us a message that you clicked button 1. When we click button 2 as well, we clicked button 2. Let's press OK. When you click button 3, it says you click button 3. So with the help of forEach function now, we have been able to write just few lines of code by achieving numerous things. That is, we concatenated it with what? This. Firstly, we selected all the buttons, all the classes that have class of button. We call everything by making use of document query selector all, and then we loop over it by making use of forEach. We loop over it by making use of forEach, and then we manipulated it done by what? Inserting the text we want there, and then we also call a what? A forEach, and we also call an event listener on it. So let's now make this to work on nested array. So we want to make this to work on nested array. So let's create an array of 2 by 2D array by saying const matrix. We have something like, okay, this is the first one, 1, 2, 3, 4. The second one we have 5, 6, 7, 8, and then lastly we have 9, 10, 11, 12. So we have, this is what? 2D array. So let's now look through this 2D array by making use of forEach method. So we named a variable called matrix 2D. So what's the next thing for us? Let's say matrix dot forEach, and then let's call this on row, and then let's see console.log. We're having what row. You will see what we are going to have here now. In the case of this, let's comment this one out. So let's see what we're having right here now. Can you see? We're having the array of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But we want to print it out. We want to print every of the single out. So the next thing we have to do is that we are still going to loop through this one as well. So just as us, we trying to loop this twice. So what is the next thing for us to do? For us to be able to print an individual element out, we want to now say that row dot forEach again, and then let's now call it cell, and then let's now say console.log cell. So by doing this, we'll be able to print out each element outside. So can you see? So we've printed 1, 2, 3 down to what? Down to 12. So you can also make use of forEach method on what? Double to the nested array. So the next thing I want to talk about here now is what are the common pitfalls, and what are the common mistakes that can happen in what? By making use of forEach pitfall. By making use of forEach element. You see, in JavaScript, you cannot make use of break or continue inside forEach method. Unlike where we can make use of break or continue in loop method, or for loop, while loop, and then for loop, while loop, and yeah. So we can't make use of what? We can't make use of break, even though we are looping through over it, but we can't make use of break or continue in for loop. If we are to make use of break or continue, we are going to have an error. So let's now try to test that out now, and then let's see what we have. For example, let's make use of break or continue. So let's now see, we've declared this number before. Let's clean this. Let's comment this one out. You see that we've declared the number before, which is numbers. So from that numbers, let's now say dot forEach, and then let's call this one forEach, and then let's say num. So let's now see, in the case of this now, let me change this one to 30. So let's now see if num is equals to 20, what do you want to do? We want you to what? We want you to break. You can see now, for instance, I'm already getting the error. I'm already what? I'm already getting the error. Then let's console.log the number. And that I'm already what? I'm already getting the error. So in the case of this now, we cannot make use of break in what? In forEach method. So let's check what we have here now. Can you see? Uncut syntax, illegal break statement. That is, break does not work. Break and continue. It does not work in what? In forEach method. Unlike the way break works in for loop method, or like the way breaks works in what? In while method, do while method. So how do we go around this now? How do we go around this? How can we make use of this? Since we cannot make use of break or continue, how can we find our way around this? So we can find our way around this by making use of return. By making use of the return statement. For example now, let's now see, we are iterating over the numbers. Let's now see if num equals to 20, what do we want to happen? We want you to return. Not that is, you should break it. Can you see? So, but in the case of this, it's going to bring out the whole rest. It will print out the whole rest. So let's now say console.log. Let's now say console.log what? Nums. So what are we having here now? We're having 10 and what? 30. But should in the case of for loop or do while loop, it will stop at 10. But in the case of this, since when it got to 20, when it retreats to 20 here, it retreats over here, it bring it out. When it retreats over here, it's what? It is equal to then what? It cut it, and then it what? It continued the iteration. Unlike for loop or while loop, whereby if you write break, it will stop at what you want to do. Let's see what we have next now. So the next thing we want to talk about now is that how can we modify the original array? In the sense that by default, modifying the original array, by default, forEach method is not mutable. That is, it does not mutate by default. So, but if you want to mutate it, how can you do such a thing? So that is what you want to do now. How can you do original? How can you do it? How can you achieve that? So that is what we want to talk now. So how can we achieve that? We want to mutate the original array. So let's move on to. So we're making use of the number we've also done before. So let's now see numbers dot forEach. Let's comment this one out. Number dot forEach, and then we have nums. So what's the next thing we want to do now? We are now saying that for us to be able to mutate it, you agree with me that forEach takes in 3 parameters: the element which are named as num, the index, and then the array. So, and then in this case now, we want to we want to modify the original array. So how do we do it? We are going to bring out this array, which is the original one that is coming from here, and then the index of it, that is each and every one of it. We now want to equate it to the element multiplied by 2. Can you see? So let's now console.log the original array, the array we are having, and then you see what we have now. What do we have here now? Numbers. So let's see what we have here. See, in the case of this now, we want to modify this, but by default, forEach method does not mutate. A forEach method does not mutate the array. So, but in this case now, we want to mutate the array. That is, we by our own self. We want to mutate the array, and then we want to achieve this by calling the element, the index, and then the array. Then we set the index to the array. And after that, then we now equate it to this element. So let's now see what we have here. Can you see now? By having 20, 40, and then what, 60. So originally now we've mutated the what, we've tampered with the original array. So that is that, by the way. So let's move on. And then for it also have a method that if there is undefined in the array, for example now we are having const numbers 1, and then let's now name this 30 undefined, and then 50, and then let's just make an empty array, and then let's create an empty space, and then let's now say this one 33. So let's make use of forEach method on this. Numbers 1 dot forEach. What are we trying to see here now? What I'm trying to see is that forEach method ignores undefined. And then in this scenario we're having here now, we're having two undefined, that is stated here, undefined and then J. So but let's see what we have. And then let's call this one nums. And then let's now see console.log nums. So let's see what we have here. Can you see that totally it ignores this one. It ignores the empty space here because it is not what we have here. So let's now move on to let's take in another example, and then let's see what we have here now. Let's move on to, maybe for instance now you want to work with a database, or you want to work with a large data set. Let's see how forEach is going to come in. So firstly, let's create a what? Let's create array of objects. In the case of this now, we are having names to be Alice, we are having age to be 22. So in the case of these two, we are having name to be what? Having name to be Victoria, and then we are having age to be what? We have age to be what? 20. So lastly here now, we are having name to be what? We are having name to be John, and then we are having age to be what? 26. So let's iterate over this as well. So we can just see users.forEach, and then let's now name this user, and then let's now see console.log. What are we having here? User.name, and what? User is user.age years old. So we want to make use of data like this, and then let's see what we got. Let's refresh this, and then let's see. Can you see? Yes, now see what we're having here. Alice is 22 years old, Victoria is 20 years old, John is 26 years old. So far so good. We've been able to look about what? We're able to look on forEach method. That is, we see that for each method is one of the methods in JavaScript that you can use it to iterate over an array, and then it returns what's undefined. Please leave that in that it returns undefined, and then also it takes a single parameter, and then that parameter takes in three arguments. The first argument is the element or the value. The second argument is the index of that element that it is retrieving over, and then lastly the array, which is the original array of what you are looping or what you are iterating over. And then also we try to make use of for each method to manipulate the DOM, whereby we insert some text inside and then we call an event listener on it. And then also we also make use of 2D nested array. And then for us to be able to make use of 2D nested array to get the actual element in that 2D array, 2D nested array, what do? We iterate it twice. That is, we loop put first, we get the array, and then we now iterate it again. If it is 3D or 4D arrays, definitely you have to do it the numbers of times it comes, which is 3 times. Then what was the next thing we did? We said that by default, for each method does not mutate an array. So, but you can do that as your own way. Maybe you want to do anything, then if you want to do that as your own way, you call the number, you call the element, you call the index, and then you call the array. Then you set the index to the array, and then you create it to the element that you retrieve over. And then I also told you that for each here in this sense, it ignores undefined. In the case of this, it ignores undefined. This one, it ignores undefined. And then lastly, we talked about making use of real data, whereby we logged it to the console, and then you see. So we've come to the end of the tutorial. So I want you guys to please like, subscribe to this channel by getting more JavaScript tutorial and JavaScript tricks. Thanks so much. I really appreciate you. Bye bye.